think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us this morning. My name's Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. It is, weirdly enough, one of those Fridays that happens to fall on the 13th day of the month. So if you're superstitious, make of that what you will.
I'm not superstitious, but I am a little.
Now, I will tell you this. I mean, with Friday the 13th, I'm not really superstitious. But I will say, like, if it was Friday the 13th, and like a black cat walked in front of my path, I'd be like, I'm going to go the other way. You know what I mean?
Why does it have to be a black cat, Paul?
Okay.
But in the words, I'm pretty sure it's Michael Scott from The Office. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a little stitious. I'm a little suspicious. All right, folks, we got a great show. Coming up next hour, we're going to be talking with Congressman Rick Crawford, which is actually really timely if you think about it, because what's been going on with the impeachment, but also the release of the Inspector General Michael Horowitz's report and everything that's been going on with that, the coverage of that versus the coverage of the impeachment. And I'll give you some updates about where we are on that, what Jerry Nadler did yesterday, which apparently just blew everyone's schedules up. And a lot of people think it's because they wanted that they're just not getting the spectacle and the theater that they wanted to get with impeachment. I mean, the ratings are not good, and they didn't want to have the impeachment vote in the Judiciary Committee yesterday after they had a 14-hour hearing. They decided to have it this morning at 10, which will now carry on into the end of the week news. They'll talk about it all day, okay, instead of at the very end of the night. Anyway, I think it's all done to essentially package this in a way that is the most consumable, or at least the thought is we want to make this as consumable as we can for the masses, and the media is going to just mainstream media, we know this, they are the public relations outfit for the Democrat Party. We know this. Now, before we get to that, though, let's kind of take a trip overseas. Let's put yourself in the shoes of the average citizen of Great Britain. You went and you voted for Brexit how long ago? And all the way back in 2016, you voted for Brexit. A lot of people thought that when Brexit happened and everybody said it wasn't going to happen, that's when some people believed that Donald Trump might actually win. The small stones that begin the avalanche, if you will. And yet, the powers that be, they said, you know what? We're going to use every trick we can to not respect the will of the people of England or Great Britain or whatever. I don't know. The United Kingdom. Let's use the proper name. And we have seen what the system was doing over there, and they wanted to have a second referendum, or at least that's what some people said needed to happen. Like, we need to vote again because we're not sure that the people really knew about all of this the first time. Here's Breitbart.com, because Boris Johnson has just won a massive victory, basically putting the final nail in the coffin of any idea of a second referendum. They now have a clear mandate across the pond. A clear mandate. President Trump is hailing the United Kingdom election result, saying that there will be a massive new trade deal after Brexit, specifically between the United States and the UK. Congratulations to Boris Johnson on his great win, wrote the president. Britain and the United States will now be free to strike a massive new trade deal after Brexit. The deal has the potential to be far bigger and more lucrative than any deal that could be made with the European Union. Also, Nigel Farage, who I am a fanboy of. I love following Nigel Farage just kind of passively. I'm fascinated with this guy. He started the UKIP party, United Kingdom Independent Party. I don't think he's a part of that anymore. Just going by memory here. But this is what he said as a result of the elections last night. He says, the Brexit war is over. Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage has said that the Brexit war is over and the UK is much closer to leaving the EU after the Conservatives won the general election. Speaking in the early hours Friday morning to Sky News Australia, as exit polls predicted a massive majority for the Conservative Party, Mr. Farage said, it's done. The war is over. It's finished. We're leaving. After the 2016 referendum, the 2017 general election, the 2019 European Parliament elections, and now the December general election, all pointing towards a leave destination for the UK, Mr. Farage declared the Brexit question closed. However, he said getting Brexit doesn't end all political arguments, but what it does do, if done properly, is take us back to being an independent, democratic, self-governing nation, something we should have never given up way back in the 1970s. And that is why the mainstream media has been so down on Brexit, because the mainstream media represents this idea that those things are bad. An independent, democratic, self-governing nation with borders, we can't have that. We can't have that. That makes people feel uncomfortable, right? Because it goes against this multiculturalism nonsense that they've shoved down our throat. Now, when I say multiculturalism, all I'm saying is, look, we're not talking about racism or being a bigot or something like that, but multiculturalism is fundamentally based by having to, push down the obvious, which is some cultures have better ideas than other cultures. That's why there are differences, right? People approach things different ways. Remember when Barack Obama made the NASA guy the head of NASA? This was a huge story back in 2008, 2009. He retooled the head of NASA to reach out to Islamic countries to make them feel good about their contributions to the scientific community, historically speaking. That's what he reduced one guy at NASA to. His job was now to reach out to Muslim countries and make them feel good and promote their contributions to the science. It's like, why do we feel the need? Why was that a thing? Why are we worried about people's feelings when it comes to things like this? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense at all. And that is just a small symptom, a small part of what brings us where we are today. And the people of Great Britain are like, you know what? We're going to go back to the way things were. But I didn't realize it was way back in the 70s when all of this started. That's just my historical ignorance there. Nigel Farage tweeting this: hard left socialism has been crushed tonight. Great news. Hard left socialism was crushed in the United Kingdom last night. I wonder what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is doing about this time right now. Here is the Prime Minister for the United Kingdom. This is Boris Johnson. Go ahead and listen to this speech first. I thought it was pretty good. With this election, we put an end to all those miserable threats of a second referendum. Listen. Oh, well, it's apparently our video doesn't want to play. I can see you trying to hit it. Well, it'll play right now. Here we go.
We put an end to all those miserable threats of a second referendum. And I say I say respectfully. I say respectfully to our stentorian friend in the blue 12-star hat.
That's a European Union reference. 12-star hat.
That's it. Time to put a sock in the megaphone and give everybody some peace.
12-star hat.
But I have a message to all those who voted for us yesterday, especially those who voted for us Conservatives, One Nation Conservatives, for the first time. You may only have lent us your vote, and you may not think of yourself as a natural Tory. And as I think I said 11 years ago to the people of London when I was elected in what was thought of as a Labour city, your hand may have quivered over the ballot paper as before you put your cross in the Conservative box. And you may intend to return to Labour next time round. And if that is the case, I am humbled that you have put your trust in me and that you have put your trust in us. And I and we will never take your support for granted.
So that's fascinating to me. It's, again, Boris Johnson delivers general election victory speech. Yeah. So it's fascinating to me because as I was watching this clip this morning, I couldn't help but draw parallels between maybe some more, members of the Labor Party supporting the Conservative Party across the pond, comparing that with lifelong Democrats that voted for Donald Trump last time, and even more of them that are going to vote for Donald Trump the next time. Just a thought. I mean, it's kind of like looking into a mirror, isn't it? But just kind of like things are slightly different, but you still have these two countries that represent Western civilization, and they're both kind of making they're coming to the same conclusions that the nation state isn't such a bad thing anymore. It's not lost on me. Here's another speech from Boris Johnson. This is what he talks about Brexit. Go to the next tweet, Joe. CNN International tweeted this about getting Brexit done, and they're
as the nation hands us this historic mandate, we must rise to the challenge and to the level of expectations. And Parliament must change so that we in Parliament are working for you, the British people. And that is what we will now do, isn't it? That is what we will now do. Let's go out and get on with it. Let's unite this country. Let's spread opportunity to every corner of the UK with superb education, superb infrastructure and technology. Let's get Brexit done. But first, my friends, let's get breakfast done too. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you all.
Let's get breakfast done. I can get behind that. They're saying going to be Brexited by January 31st. Is what I'm hearing according to the reports. January 31st. This is pretty fascinating stuff. If you think about everything this country's been through over the last couple of years, again, it's kind of like a mirror in a way. Just slightly different, Because what's our country been through the last 3 years? Their country decides they want a whole new political system in a way. Not a whole new political system, but you know what I mean? Severing the political ties with the European Union. Is that not a lot like what Donald Trump has tried to do by severing the traditional global order of things as well as trying to actually take back control of the presidency from the lifelong bureaucrats that think that they're the policy setters and that the American people really have no say? Something to think about. I don't think we think about this stuff enough, honestly. Because it very much, their country has been through, the people spoke, right? And the establishment in the United Kingdom said, we're not going to do this. We want to have another vote. I mean, it'd be like them saying, are you sure you wanted Donald Trump? Let's have another election real quick. And it looks like they're finally going to Brexit versus what our country's been. I mean, the last 3 years. We've had the deep state and politicians lying, and we now know this is the case. We now know with the Horowitz report that this whole thing was a setup. We now know that there are charges coming against people because of what Bill. We haven't even covered that. I've been gone for the last 2 days working on the big changes that are coming to Conduit News at the first of the year. Very exciting stuff, by the way. But this whole thing that what Bill Barr said about what's actually in that Horowitz report, about what actually the FBI did, and what John Durham is probably going to do. It's all going to be laid bare. By the way, I'd like to ask Congressman Rick Crawford about this when we talk to him coming up at 7:33 this morning. Rick Crawford will be on, and it's a perfect time for him to be on because of all the craziness that's went on, and the craziness that's going to continue this morning at 10 o'clock when Jerry Nadler is going to hold the vote in a very strategic. The timing is a strategic one to get the media to parrot exactly what the Democrats want them to parrot, which is what they always do. That's what the media is. Last thing I'll say about Great Britain. Has anybody ever seen the 1970 film Cromwell, starring Alec Guinness? Well, it's actually starring Sir Richard Harris. Richard Harris, you guys remember who he is? My generation probably doesn't know him as much. He's the guy that was the first Dumbledore and then died, and then they had to replace him with that other guy. That's who Richard Harris is, okay? But back in the 70s, he played Oliver Cromwell in the 1970s film Cromwell. Sir Alec Guinness played King Charles, okay? If you've never seen this movie, it'd be worth just to watch some clips on YouTube. Matter of fact, I've watched so many of these clips on YouTube, and I think they're popping up in my feed because of what's been going on with Brexit. And the fact that this happened like 100 years before the American Revolution just blew my mind as well once I realized the historical significance of this and how our founders would have known what had happened. But in the history books, by the way, the history books, they get to Cromwell, and they just like, oh, yeah, that's Cromwell. He was England's only dictator. Yeah. And then they just move on. The story is way better than that. The religious convictions that this guy had, it's nuts. And I don't know the complete historical accuracy of the movie itself, but boy, I mean, disbanding Parliament, the English Civil War, I mean, it was a crazy wild time. Crazy wild time. Anyway, if you have never seen the movie, I would recommend that you watch it. I have watched a bunch of YouTube clips on it, and I've asked for it for Christmas. Like, my wife's like, what do you want for Christmas? I'm like, I want the 1970 movie Cromwell. She's like, I don't want to watch that. And I'm like, I know, but I do. I really do. And I'm sure that movie's got to go for like $5 on Amazon or something crazy right now. Like, it's got to be the cheapest movie you can get out there. Okay, we're going to take a break, going to reset here. We got a new article that we haven't covered yet. It's up at conduitforaction.org. We'll get to it. It's about the highway tax. Also, this Arkansas Supreme Court coming out with some decisions, one about death row inmate and the other about whether or not the signatures have to be counted with the ophthalmologists trying to get back at the optometrists. It's a turf war, and it's all about money, not safety. Money. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major...
Let's get Brexit done. When we come back, let's go over just a few things on this impeachment. What I'll let you hear is Congressman Doug Collins. I can't believe this, but even the media outlet, even the mainstream media is saying Republicans were genuinely angry. Republicans had justified or genuine anger in being upset with Jerry Nadler and what he did. And, well, what did Jerry Nadler do? At the last minute, yesterday, they'd been meeting for like 12 hours or something crazy over the impeachment of Donald Trump over abuse of power. Remember when it was a quid pro quo? Remember when they were going to impeach him because it was a quid pro quo? And then they were going to impeach him because it was a bribe. And now they're going to impeach him over abuse of power, which is just like, they might as well just say, like, this article of impeachment, we're impeaching the President of the United States because we all have decided that we don't like him. The crime of not being liked, the high crime and misdemeanor of not being liked is why you will be removed from office. And then at the last minute, Jerry Nadler says, we're going to recess until tomorrow at 10 o'clock where we'll take the vote. And so everybody had plane tickets. Everybody, they were going to go home. I think there's also like an overseas thing to celebrate this weekend, the Battle of the Bulge. There was an event to commemorate that. All of that wiped out, gone. Also, the media will hype this, and it'll go into the weekend with the president being impeached on Friday morning.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. It is a Johnny Cash Friday, and this is what the congressman from Georgia, right, Doug Collins. Boy, the left hates this guy, man. They hate Doug Collins so much. Because they make, he makes an incredible amount of sense. He's also just, he talks 1,000 miles a minute. But man, he's been hammering the left. I will also tell you this: what the Republicans in Congress have done, standing against the Democrat lies, they've been like rabid dogs, and I'm so proud of them. I really am. Like, they have just been swinging, and they know they're never going to appease the media, and they're getting to the facts. They're exposing all of these people. And I hope if this goes to trial in the Senate, that the Senate does the same thing. Here is Representative Collins slamming what happened yesterday at the last minute. Listen.
Hours was enough. So tonight, without consulting the ranking member, without consulting anyone, schedules of anybody be put out there. We're scheduling this at 10 a.m. in the morning. I don't know. The integrity level of this committee has been, the chairman's integrity is gone. His staff is gone. This was the most Bush League thing I have seen forever. And if the American people wondered about this impeachment anymore, they don't have to wonder anymore. They saw what happened right here tonight, because this committee is more concerned about getting it on TV in the morning than it was finishing its job tonight and letting the members go home. Words cannot describe how inappropriate this was, how I have been saying for the whole year how this committee is just simply rum-shotting the rules of this House, and this proves it tonight. They do not care about rules. They have one thing, their hatred of Donald Trump, and this showed it tonight because they want to shine into these cameras, get prettied up, and then vote and make it all happen. This was the most, I'm just beyond words at this point, but it shows their lack of integrity in this process and the lack of case that they have. For them to actually come out here to defend this is the most ludicrous thing I've ever seen in my life.
All right, you see Louis Gohmert behind him there? Like, Louis Gohmert kind of slinks in or you know, slunk, is that a word? I don't know. He's kind of, I love Louis Gohmert, but he kind of comes in the phrase. When Jerry Nadler said that they were recessing until 10 a.m. tomorrow, blindsiding everybody. I mean, folks, you got to understand something. It's just, does he have the power to do it? Absolutely. But it would just be a common courtesy to let the Republicans know so that they can schedule and maybe not get plane tickets, maybe not, you know what I mean? Maybe be able to tell their families, hey, I'm not coming home tonight. It's just like a common courtesy. The only reason you do that is to just be mean, you know? But Louis Gohmert, when he said that, when Jerry Nadler went, we'll convene at 10 a.m. tomorrow, recess, it's reported that Louis Gohmert just looked at the Jerry Nadler and shouted, Stalinist! The Jerry Nadler. Yeah, he looked at the Jerry Nadler and he just called him a Stalinist. Which I thought was pretty funny, according to reports.
From now on, this would be known as the Nadler maneuver.
The Nadler. Well, you know, Jerry Nadler used to be a rather large man. And matter of fact, the website, thelibertydaily.com, which is a news aggregator, every time they mention Jerry Nadler, they say that he's it's funny because what do they call him? They call him a stomach-stapled Stalinist. So I'm wondering if Louis Gohmert from Texas... here it is. Every time, stomach stapled Stalinist Gerald Nadler. Anytime the Liberty Daily references Nadler, they say stomach stapled Stalinist, and then Gohmert calling him Stalin. I think that's really funny to me. Okay, real quick. I do have to get to this. So if you've been following me on Twitter the last couple of days, I like to retweet people. I don't do a lot of original stuff on Twitter. I just like to retweet a lot. I retweeted the Wall Street Journal's Kimberly Strassel because she had this thread. Now the RedState.com has a write-up on it. Kimberly Strassel, buried in the IG report is a line that poses an enormous question central to everything. You got to remember these three people, Bruce Orr, Glenn Simpson, Nellie Orr, okay? And Fusion GPS, right? Fusion GPS. So I retweeted this thread, so you can get it if you go to Paul Harrell 1776. That's my handle on Twitter. This is what Wall Street Journal, Kimberly Strassel said. Quote, buried in the Inspector General report is a line that poses an enormous question, one that is central to everything and really must be answered. Remember, according to all relevant players, prior to July of 2016, nobody had a Trump-Russia collusion narrative on their minds. Indeed, The FBI says it was only the Downer tip-off at the end of July that spurred the investigation. Downer, for his part, says it was public revelation in July of the DNC hack that caused him to finally wonder about collusion and connect his spring conversation with George Papadopoulos. Fusion GPS's Glenn Simpson, meanwhile, in Senate testimony, stressed he hired Christopher Steele in May to look at Trump's business activities in Russia. By Glenn Simpson's telling, under penalty of perjury, Steele just sort of stumbled on this much broader political conspiracy. Oh, we just stumbled upon it. Kimberly Strassel goes on. But here is what Christopher Steele told the Inspector General, that in May of 2016, Glenn Simpson approached Steele to, quote, assist in determining Russia's actions related to the 2016 election, end quote. Again, another quote, whether Russia was trying to achieve a particular election outcome. So that blows up the whole July thing, means that they were really talking Trump-Russia collusion in May, not July. She goes on, whether there were any ties between the Russian government and Trump and his campaign. It seems that Glenn Simpson had a pretty good bead on the narrative long before the government did. Long before the government claims to have had a bead on it. Even before even his own source had reported it. So Glenn Simpson is asking Christopher Steele to look into this before his own source tells him that there's a problem. Seems like somebody created a feedback loop, but it had to start somewhere. She ends her tweet by saying, let's hope let's hope U.S. Attorney John Durham provides some answers on who exactly knew what in the spring of 2016. Something to think about. You haven't really heard that anywhere, I know. It's kind of esoteric and kind of in the weeds, but I mean, all of these folks are giving answers as to what happened. I mean, they're, hindsight's 2020, and we're getting contradictory answers. This article reminds us that Devin Nunes appeared on Fox News Hannity in the spring to discuss the origins of the Steele dossier. He said it should really be called the Simpson dossier. Although Christopher Steele likely contributed stories to the dossier and his years of experience in British intelligence lent credence to the document, Nunes said he believed that Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson may have actually written the majority of it. And that's the problem. That's a big problem. Because then you get to Bruce Orr, you get to Nellie Orr. Nellie Orr was working for Fusion GPS with Glenn Simpson, Bruce Orr in the Justice Department, feeding the Justice Department all this phony BS. And we will see eventually. If you don't believe it was a setup now, well, at some point you will. Because it's all going to come out. It really is. Okay, a few things. Did anybody see this casino story in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette this morning? Jeannie Roberts, headline, Casino License Splits County Over Issue. Two sides meet to address interlocal deal annexation. It seems that, there's been this desire. The county, Pope County, has moved forward, and they wanted Russellville, or Russellville wanted a piece of the pie as well. Originally, remember, they were going to just kind of cut Russellville out and not necessarily give Russellville any of the tax money. It was all going to go to Pope County. Well, they're now saying that, Pope County will be voluntarily annexed into Russellville. Land earmarked for a casino in Pope County will voluntarily be annexed into Russellville, giving the city the largest split of gambling revenue. That's if they go with the Cherokee Business Nation. So I was driving through Russellville the last couple of days, and I definitely saw some of those billboards with the casino advertisements on it and everything else. So, and again, I'm one of these guys, just to be honest, I kind of just somebody who's on the outside. I don't live in Pope County, don't live in Russellville, just somebody from the outside looking in. If I kind of feel sad because I know there's people that don't want this in their community, and feel pretty powerless right now because it looks like it's coming one way or the other. I mean, even if it's kind of strange. Even if you got politicians that campaigned one way and are voting a different way, and I think some of these politicians probably know they're not going to be in office, but they're going to go ahead and do what they're going to do, and who cares? The damage will be done, if you will. And who knows? I mean, we could speculate forever. Who knows what? Like, let's say this will be interesting to me. Just hypothesis here, just speculation. If not one person on the Pope County Quorum Court, the county judge as well, ran on a pro-casino platform, if they didn't do it, and now they go through with it, and let's say that the legal stuff works out in the casino's favor and everything else. Let's say that everything shakes out and Pope County gets a casino. And let's say the people are upset about it, and they go and they vote for new people. They vote for a new county judge. They vote for new quorum court members and everything else. It would be interesting to track what jobs some of these potentially former elected officials would get. Just something to be mindful of. Because I kind of just have my suspicions. You know what I mean? I have my suspicions. I'll tell you this much. And I know the casino lobby is a very new, it's new to the state of Arkansas. Now, the gambling lobby isn't, but the casino lobby certainly is. But I'll tell you this, man. Arkansas big business, they have a very comfortable seat at the government's table, don't they? Telephone number 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799 if you want to call or text. Again, coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we'll be talking with Congressman Rick Crawford, who's on the Intelligence Committee in the House. We'll be talking with him about all of the shenanigans that are going on in Washington, D.C. right now. I'm telling you, it's just nuts what's going on. So, Arkansas Supreme Court has been in the news last couple of days. Have you heard about this one? I heard about this in a just kind of like a top of the hour yesterday. I was in the car driving, and I heard that the Arkansas Supreme Court had blocked a DNA test at the request. It was being requested by a man who has been convicted of the 1993 murder of a DeQueen woman. And I was like, just the stab, just the little headline. I was like, this doesn't. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound good to me. Why would they block a testing of DNA if there's new DNA or if there's new evidence? But that's all that I heard. I didn't hear anything else. So then you got to actually read some of the opinion here. So it was a 5-2 decision. A 5-2 decision. The Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that there's already plenty of evidence that supports the conviction of a man by the name of, last name of Johnson. His name is Stacy Johnson. Okay? And he is convicted back in 1993 of killing a woman by the name of Harrell Heath. Thing is, for years, Johnson has argued that there's evidence that also needs to be tested in the case that hasn't been tested. He thinks it'll implicate another suspect, which was, at the time, Heath's ex-boyfriend, who's now deceased. So he was supposed to be executed in April of 2017, but then he got help from the Innocence Project in New York, and they got a stay while the Arkansas Supreme Court considered the case. This is now that decision. And they're saying they're not going to do any more DNA testing. And here is Justice Sean Womack writing for the majority. Quote, the presence of another male's DNA could not significantly advance Johnson's claim of innocence in light of the remaining evidence. It simply cannot explain away the DNA evidence directly linking Johnson to both crime scenes. Johnson's saliva on the partially smoked cigarette in the pocket of the bloody green shirt on or at the roadside park, and his hairs discovered on and around Heath's body. Womack also pointed to as further evidence of Johnson's guilt, testimony by jailhouse informant and Johnson's stepmother tying him to Heath's apartment that night. Also, apparently when he was arrested in New Mexico, he said something incriminating to the police officer. So that's interesting. Then we have, the evidence that Johnson sought. He wanted, there's Caucasian hairs found near Heath's body and a second location where bloody clothes were dropped. Let me read you. I'm going to read when we come back. I'll read you the dissent, part of what the dissent said, because it seems like they brought up the issue of race here, and that's why the ruling was what it was, which prompted another response from Sean Womack saying race had absolutely nothing to do with this. Anyway, we'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
The United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business
There we
owner,
go. Welcome
I know
back,
the
ladies and
government
gentlemen. This
rarely
is Johnny Cash Friday. 870-275-9799. We're going over this case at Arkansas Supreme Court saying that the not going to test other DNA evidence when it comes to the case of a guy by the name of Stacy Johnson, who was convicted of killing Carol Heath in 1993. Justice Womack, saying that there's already so much other evidence that directly links the convicted to the crime scene, and they're pretty sure they got the guy. Of course, you have Justice Joe Hart and Robin Wynn each wrote separate dissents. In a dissent nearly 3 times as long as the majority opinion, Hart panned the majority's conclusions as hyperbole and a hand wave and cast doubt on much of the evidence. Testing further evidence from those locations, Hart wrote, would not have guaranteed Johnson's release or even a new trial. Instead, she said testing could study the very real possibility that someone else killed Heath. Quote, perhaps those opposing Johnson's proposed testing are simply anxious about what it could possibly reveal, that another conviction of a black man in the 1990s was attributable to investigative failures and bias and not to actual guilt, she wrote. That rebuke stimulated a response from Justice Womack, writing, quote, race has nothing to do with the legal question in the case. We likewise object to the dissent's assertion that law enforcement officers manufactured the chain of custody and swapped in critical evidence. Such undeserved and unsubstantiated attacks undermine the public's trust in the integrity of our criminal justice system. Interesting. I will say from an optics standpoint, I don't know why you wouldn't test the DNA. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I mean, if you got, let's say, but we have him with the murder weapon in the hand. We have video with, like stabbing the woman or whatever. I don't know how this woman died. You have to forgive me. But, and we want justice for the families here, obviously. But I will say from a mainstream media, give you half the facts, and the dissent bringing up race, another black man in the 1990s that was wrongfully, it's got all the hallmarks of it, like red meat for the media, and I would just say that I don't know. What's the harm in just letting them test the evidence too at the same time, right? This is where you get people who are anti-death penalty be like, see, is it really beyond a doubt when they won't test this new evidence he wants tested? And anyway. But there are definitely two sides to the story. I can see both sides. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk a little bit about half-cent sales tax when we come back.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas, in Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hour number 2, it's Friday, Johnny Cast Friday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, 7:33, Congressman Rick Crawford. Now, this is great to have him on in these turbulent times in Washington, D.C. We are finding out so much with this Michael Horowitz report about what happened in the lead up and after the 2016 elections. Also, we have the shampeachment that's going on. Congressman Gerald Nadler. He is going to be at 10 o'clock, and I guess that's 10 Eastern, so 9 o'clock Central Time. They will be reconvening to vote on these 2 articles of impeachment. Obstruction of Congress, which is very odd to me because they're saying that the president going to the courts to try to resolve disputes between the executive and legislative branches. Obstruction of Congress, which is a new one for me. And, of course, abuse of power, which is essentially the equivalent of just saying that you don't like the guy. You're going to need to point to an actual crime here, folks. Like, it was quid pro quo, and then it was bribe, and it was bribery, and you're not impeaching on any of those. It was abuse of power. He asked about Joe Biden. The Democrats have created a world where you can go and commit crimes, and as long as you're running for president, you can't be investigated. That you can't even ask a foreign leader about. How dare you ask a foreign leader about the former vice president of the United States and something he did there? Do you really think that that's the first time anything like this has ever happened? It's just the first time the deep state has ratted on somebody they don't like doing it. It's going to cost the Democrats the House, and they're doing this because the president is coming, and he's locked and loaded for these people. And what I mean by that is he knows what they did, and he knows what else they did. I mean, why did they go to all that trouble to set him up with Trump-Russia collusion and the FBI and all of the other things? Why did they do that? Because they knew if the president won, he was going to trumpet everything else that they had done that was corrupt. And not just Democrats, the entire system. Remember the Panama Papers? You remember the Panama Papers, Joe? Okay, this was like the beginning. See, Panama Papers. I've got state stuff I got to get to, but yeah, the Panama Papers, exposing the rogue offshore finance. Panama Papers are 11.5 million leaked documents that detail financial and attorney-client information for more than 214,000 offshore entities. The documents, some dating back to the 1970s, were created by and taken from a Panamanian law firm and corporate service. And, it was just all of these global elites and all of their crimes. Anyway, the point is there's a lot of stuff out there that is known and a lot of stuff that we don't even know, but there are people that do. And they're sick of it. They are sick of these people fleecing taxpayers, using them to get rich, carving out fun. The same thing that we see in Arkansas at the local level has been going on at the national and international level, and it's exponentially worse. And what the things they're willing to do to stay in power and cover it up is exponentially worse. So that's why they did all this in the first place, because they were desperate and they don't want to be exposed, and they're about to be exposed. They have been exposed. It's just a slow process. I'll talk about that later, Joe. Greta Thunberg being the person of the year versus, like, there's this kid that actually has a piece of technology that actually cleans plastic out of the ocean. Now, we don't like that guy. We're going to go with, how dare you? You've stolen my childhood. While there's some kid in a cobalt mine, be like, really, Greta, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Your childhood's been stolen. Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about your stolen childhood while you're on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Tell me more about it, please.
I'm on a boat.
Why you don't have to work a day in your life.
All right, Governor Asa Hutchinson says his top priority for 2020 is to pass Issue 1. What is Issue 1? It is going to impose a permanent one-half sales tax to be used for highways and roads. We're all going to get to vote on this thing. All of us, if we want to. As long as you're registered to vote. And an American citizen. We're all going to get to vote on this. So, this is a conduit for action commentary, okay? The question is, across the state of Arkansas, this is the question this morning. Who will endorse the tax? Who do you think is going to come to the governor's side and endorse the tax? Now, disclaimer, all of this is possibly up for debate if the governor feels more heat and if there are investigations going on about China and the Chinese entities and the law firm and not just the Chinese communist entities, but also the education company, iStation. All I'm saying is if there are more shoes to drop there, and I think there are, the governor being the spokesperson for this tax, once it gets out into the mainstream about what has happened between his law firm, his son, and the same Chinese entities that are coming to Arkansas, though also the ones he's giving taxpayer money to, and they're also clients of the law firm. I'm just saying, it may not be the guy you want to be promoting your tax when it's all said and done. Just a speculation, but I digress. Governor Hutchinson says his top priority in 2020 is to pass Issue 1, which would impose a permanent 0.5% sales tax to be used for highways and roads. What he doesn't want you to think about is this. Arkansas sales tax is one of the highest in the nation. In 2019, Arkansas passed gas and diesel fuel tax increases for highways already. Arkansas passed several other taxes in 2019. Arkansas is collecting record amounts of taxes. Did you know that? Arkansas is collecting record amounts of taxes. This tax is permanent and will be nearly impossible to repeal because it's being added to the Arkansas Constitution. So if you vote for this, we're adding a permanent tax in our Constitution, which is weird to say the least. Why would you want to do that? If the tax fails, meaning if you vote against it and there's more people that vote against it than vote for it, you will get a tax cut in 2023 when the temporary tax that we're currently paying expires and sunset. It goes away. The temporary tax is to pay for debt for specific highway projects that we've already been building. Passing the tax is not just bad, it is crazy. Now, who's going to endorse this? So you can expect the governor to present a list of those who support the tax, but the list won't mean much since the endorsements will be from those who risk nothing and can benefit by playing ball with the governor and the powers that be. Although the list is not out yet, the usual suspects include politicians who don't have an opponent, the Chamber of Commerce, and big businesses that receive taxpayer money. 1. State senators and representatives. You can expect the governor to roll out a list of state legislators who endorse the tax. But the endorsements will be from legislators who have no opponent in the upcoming election and risk nothing. Only 10 of the 35 senators and only 38 of the 100 representatives have an opponent in the primary or general election. So most legislators risk nothing by endorsing the tax because being unopposed means they won't have to face a voter backlash in the election. No risk, and they gain favor with ASA by being on the Team ASA tax and spend bandwagon. Who knows? Maybe some of the unopposed legislators who endorse the tax will have enough brownie points to get one of the high-paying state jobs ASA's been handing out to legislators. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see for that one. County officials. You can bet that county officials are going to be definitely all in for this tax because they risk nothing because they're not up for re-election in 2020. Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is the most consistent supporter of more taxes. Isn't that a shame? The Chamber of Commerce used to actually look out for small businesses, and Chamber of Commerce now ignores that tax increases hurt small business. Isn't that weird? Isn't that a complete deviation from the initial mission, or at least what they claim to put out there publicly? That the Chamber of Commerce would tell you that they're a big supporter of small business, and yet there's no tax that they don't like. And the National Chamber of Commerce is all in favor of illegal immigration, by the way. Big business will be for the tax. Some of them will. But think about it. Most will be businesses that owe Governor Hutchinson a favor because they've received state taxpayer money from ASA. Crony capitalism is bad for Arkansas, but brings lots of supporters for politicians. The only thing that stands in the way of ASA's well-funded effort to pass this crazy tax is an educated electorate. Thomas Jefferson said that an educated citizenry is indispensable to the proper functioning of a republic. Did you know that? Don't let your neighbors and friends fall victim to being low information voters. Tell them what this is really all about. This is a complex issue, and they're going to spin it. They're not going to give you the context. The average voter's not going to know that we voted for this to sunset in 2012 and that they're trying to, very much like Brexit. We talked about Brexit first hour. The United Kingdom is going to Brexit now. Huge elections, landslide for conservatives. Boris Johnson's going to be prime minister or continue to be prime minister, and they're going to Brexit now. By January 31st, it's actually going to happen. This idea of a second referendum is over. Right? And we kind of compared last hour the plight of America over the last 3 years versus the plight of the UK. Very similar if you think about, they voted for Brexit, which was an agent of change. We voted for Trump, which is a massive disruptive force. Any way you look at it. And we were just kind of comparing the two. But I kind of see it similar. I mean, I know it's a 12-year gap, but, in 2012, we voted for a tax to sunset in 2022. And then this other legislature comes back in 10 years and says, "Oh, we want to make sure you really meant what you said. Do you really want it to sunset? Because we still need it." That's just not good. That doesn't build trust in government. You should have just tried to pass a brand new tax if you're gonna. I guess you know what I mean. Like, it just doesn't build trust. We can't trust. I mean, we can't trust our government to do what they say they're going to do, to respect the will of the people. Anyway, telephone number 870-275-9799. We want to be able to trust them. We want to have confidence in our leaders. Sometimes, man, these tax increases, man, the opium of legislators, the opium of politicians. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We're going to reset. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about the Arkansas Supreme Court. They're saying that, yes, signatures should be counted to get another ballot issue on the ballot to undo a deregulation bill that made it easier for optometrists to practice according to how they're taught, something Oklahoma's been doing for 20 years. Arkansas tried to do it. The ophthalmologists strike back, though. The ophthalmologists and the optometrists, they're not fans of one another right now. We'll give you that story next.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need
Roby
people
Brock
who,
at Talk Business
in
and
the
Politics is
presidency-
reporting the Arkansas Supreme Court says signatures should be counted in effort to overturn optometrist law. Yeah, so I was there when this was debated. The medical society here in Arkansas has such a control over everything, really. They refuse to let more choice, more freedom. They don't trust you as a human being, really, as an individual, as a patient, if you will, to make choices. Even if you say, well, we're not forcing people to go to optometrists for these new procedures that they're trained to do and Oklahoma's been doing for 20 years. But if they want to, there's way more optometrists that'll really help rural individuals have better access to care. And the ophthalmologists say, no. No, this is a travesty. People are going to be dying in the streets. Dying in the streets. And somebody comes up to, somebody comes up to you and they're just blind. And they're like, what happened? Well, I went to an optometrist. And now I'm blind. It's an epidemic. I'm not saying, and there are people that make mistakes. I'm not saying that there can't be mistakes made in any medical procedure or, doctors are humans too. There's bad doctors out there. Boo-hoo. That's life. We're talking about lower costs. This isn't about public safety. The ophthalmologist, this isn't about public safety, and we went to medical school, and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, I'm giving you guys a hard time. Full disclosure, my dad's an optometrist, sorry. I forgot to say that. Normally, I've been talking about this particular subject for a year now, it feels like, or almost a year. It's not about public safety. This is about you guys protecting your market. Come on. So anyway, they debated this law in committees, 2 committees, but it was a vicious debate, and it's the only thing the Medical Society lost. The Medical Society shut down all the other deregulation bills, all of them, because the Medical Society loves regulation. You guys are just Mr. Regulation. You can't wait to limit choices and limit access to care because I don't know why, but that's who you are. That's who you want to be. Okay, we got it. You win on everything except this one case or this one bill you lose on. And it was vigorously debated in committee. It was vigorously debated in the House floor. And in the Senate, and then the governor signed it. It was just very good that the governor signed this bill. And then the ophthalmologists come behind and start gathering signatures to put it on the ballot to overturn it. And the people that they hired to gather signatures openly were lying to folks. How do I know? Well, because I ran into one at the DMV. And I got very upset. I don't get upset too often in public, but man, this guy was lying to people. He got real mad at me too when I started challenging him on his facts and stuff. Anyway, I had to remove myself from the parking lot. I removed myself But anyway, Arkansas Supreme Court ruled that the Secretary of State will have to count signatures that were submitted in a interesting way.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike
ladies
Preston.
And gentlemen, Johnny Cash Friday, thanks so much for being with us. It's always a treat. We get to talk to Congressman Rick Crawford when we get to talk to him on Fridays. Rick, how are you, sir?
Doing good, doing good.
Are you surviving in this shampeachment environment? I mean, tell us what's going on. I know the Judiciary Committee is now going to meet this morning, right?
Right. They were in session till, somewhere, probably after 11 o'clock, maybe later than that. And they decided to postpone the vote until this morning. So they're supposed to actually vote here in about an hour and a half, something like that. But, I mean, it's a complete sham. Mitch McConnell came on last night and said that there was zero chance of this ever being of President Trump being removed. So, it's all a political show.
I could tell. I mean, Congressman Doug Collins was furious. He's the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee. That it was like a last minute. They were going to vote yesterday, and at the last minute, Jerry Nadler's like, "Nope, we're going to vote tomorrow, where the cameras will be there, and now it's going to continue into the weekend." So it very much is a farce. I mean, this is all theater, trying to convince the American people that the president has done something wrong here. How does it go from quid pro quo to bribe to now we'll do abuse of power? That just seems very vague to me.
Well, it's very nebulous, loosely defined, arbitrary, subjective, all of those things, and that's by design. What they're really trying to do is to hang this scarlet letter on the president to damage his electoral prospects. They don't have a credible candidate that obviously they know they can't beat him at the ballot box, and so they're trying to weaken him and diminish him as he heads into the 2020 cycle. And it's actually having the opposite effect. And they should have learned from the 1998 issue. The difference between this and 1998 with Clinton is that Clinton actually had committed a crime. However, I'm still in hindsight being 2020. I mean, you still look at that and go, well, he didn't commit a crime against the people of the country as much as he did. I mean, he lied to Congress. I don't know if that was necessarily sufficient to remove him from office. Politically, I would say no. Obviously, it didn't have the effect that the Republicans at the time desired. But the fact remains that there was an underlying crime for which he was charged. This is different. There is no underlying crime. This is just a charge of abuse of power. Let me describe abuse of power. When an elected official without authority seizes the phone records of a sitting member of Congress and members of the media and publishes that in a report, that to me constitutes abuse of power. And then the other charge of contempt of obstruction of Congress. Obstruction of Congress. I mean, this process has been going on 71 days. There are criminal investigations that take longer than that, and it takes longer for FBI agents to gather evidence in many cases before they even would charge obstruction of justice. And so none of this rises to the level of impeachment. It's purely a political ploy.
We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. I'm glad you mentioned that stuff about what Adam Schiff did, releasing the phone records, because that actually is the perfect segue here. You had the Nunes memo. We're now in the wake of the IG report. We can read it. We know what's in there. They set the president up. And we have the Nunes memo. We can go back and read what Devin Nunes put out. It was true. He's totally vindicated. But what Adam Schiff put out in his memo, I mean, he lied. And he has essentially torn this country apart because of his lies.
Right. And ironically, there is no process for impeachment of a member of Congress. There is the ability to expel a member of Congress. I've actually drawn up a resolution, a motion to expel Adam Schiff. That's ready to go at a moment's notice. We obviously have overwhelming support in the Republican Party. We don't expect Democrats to go along with it. And so that means that it would probably be a show vote. He's not going to be removed. However, Devin Nunes he's taking legal action, because it's one thing, your members of Congress are protected under the speech and debate clause of the Constitution. They can pretty much say whatever they want to on the floor, and that extends to committee. They can say what they want in their official capacity in the House of Representatives, but saying something and doing something like what Adam Schiff did with regard to seizing those phone records, that's different. That's not protected under speech and debate clause. That's probably criminal action, and so Devin Nunes is more than likely, if he hasn't already, going to be taking legal action against Adam Schiff. Now, if there's legal action taken against him and he's indicted, much like any other member of Congress, as he's indicted, he can no longer vote during that period. He's removed from committees. So it's not that he's removed from the House, but he would no longer be able to occupy a seat on a committee. He would just be here marking time. I'm not sure if he'd have his voting privileges stripped or not, but at any rate, what that would do would be for them to be force him away from his positions on committee, and until the case is adjudicated. So, look, the evidence is very clear what he did, not just to Devin Nunes, but also to some reporters, one in particular, John Solomon, who had exposed an awful lot of wrongdoing with regard to, the mishandling of information regarding Ukraine, regarding a laundry list of issues that he's covered, credibly. That's the problem that Adam Schiff has, is that there are actually members of the media out there who do their job, and they, the mainstream media heaps scorn on them for it. But institutions like CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post, New York Times, and others have dropped all pretense of being news outlets with any kind of journalistic integrity or ethics. They are purely an arm of the Democrat Party, and they function as a propaganda organ for people like Adam Schiff and attempt to provide him political cover while he does what he does. And, of course, the same thing applies to Pelosi. Here's the thing with Pelosi, though. She term limited herself to 4 terms as Speaker. This is her 4th term. She's going for broke here. She has nothing left to lose. The reason she did this is because the squad was orchestrating potentially a motion to vacate the chair if they didn't get their way. And that would have, in her mind, stained her legacy forever as having been forced out of her position as Speaker. And so rather than run the risk of the progressive wing of her party dropping a motion to vacate the chair on her, she decided to capitulate, give them what they wanted so she could retain her position as Speaker until such time as she's either term limited out or she's voted out. More likely, either way, she's gone in 2020. And so she, I think, opted for this action to preserve what legacy she might think she has in her mind, as opposed to being forced out by the progressive wing of her own party.
We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. How do you interpret the Horowitz report, the Inspector General report we've been waiting on? I know, the initial thing that he says in that very long report is, he didn't find any political bias, but we also have the U.S. Attorney John Durham looking into this, and comments by Attorney General Barr. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I think folks need to realize that the best analogy for what an IG does in this context, you compare them to the HR department of a corporation. The HR department exists ostensibly to protect the workforce, when in fact what they really exist for is to protect the corporation from being sued. So the HR department is acting as an agent for the corporation to prevent legal action being taken against them for things that might happen involving the workforce. That's essentially what the IG is how he's conducted himself. He's basically trying to represent the agency without presenting a case that makes them look bad. At the same time, if you also have to understand that he has limited authority. There are former employees that he cannot question, and they're not compelled to cooperate because he doesn't have that authority. He's not conducting criminal investigation, whereas Durham is. Durham is conducting a full-on criminal investigation, and so that's why there's a difference between his perspective and the IG perspective. So you're going to see a different set of findings. There's already been, in spite of the fact that Horowitz is acting as the IG, and so the limited authority and scope that implies, in spite of that, there's been at least one criminal referral as a result of his findings. And so that really says something, too. And the other thing is a high bar with regard to any kind of malfeasance from his perspective because, again, he's there as a representative, ultimately works for the people he's investigating. So therefore, you can expect to have more of a soft presentation of the findings. John Durham is not under those constraints. And so you will likely see a considerably more damning evidence coming from Durham.
So we've had many discussions, Rick, over the years, it seems, about James Comey. I think you and I both wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt several years ago. This report was released. He said he was vindicated, but then Michael Horowitz in committee said no one is vindicated as a result of this report.
Right.
What are your thoughts on Comey?
Well, James Comey has proven to be a complete narcissist and in total denial about what's going on out there and the fact that he's neck deep in it. He played a role in the malfeasance with regard to the securing the FISA warrant and continuing the authorization of the FISA warrant even after exculpatory evidence was present or should have been present. That's also part of the process, is that when you have exculpatory evidence, you're required to present that. It wasn't, even Horowitz's report, I believe, found that to be the case. So he is far from exonerated, and I wouldn't speculate as to what Durham's report will lead to in terms of criminal action against Comey, but there is certainly the potential for Comey, Brennan, and Clapper to be involved in some sort of criminal action. In fact, it appears that, some of the things I've seen in the media, that there is now some dissension in the ranks among those three. And it may be that they're trying to get their story straight, or it may be that, rats leaving the sinking ship. I'm not sure how to describe it, but there's some problems there that they're going to have a tough time reconciling their stories based on what I think John Durham will present, and there will be indictments handed down of some higher level officials. I'm almost certain of it.
We're talking again with Congressman Rick Crawford. Rick, I saw you, and we played this on Tuesday of the show, but you were on Fox and Friends First a week ago, today actually, and you mentioned that the president is trying to make sure that what happened to him never happens to another president again.
Well, that's the problem with this process, is that it has been hijacked and weaponized for political purposes, not because there's some sort of a real need to remove this president, but because they just don't have any faith in their own ability to win the election. They don't have any faith in their ability to win the day in the arena of ideas, and they've just run out. And so that's what this is about, and it's unfortunate, but the fact is, I do think the president is standing against this in good faith to prevent other presidents from having to face this type of action.
Rick, it's always great to talk to you. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving us some insight into this crazy world that we're watching from Arkansas, and I hope you have a great weekend, sir.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Rick Crawford, everybody. We're going to make a YouTube video of this. It'll be up at conduitnews.com as well as our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to Conduit News on YouTube and click the little bell to receive notifications. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
In China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election.
Here we go. Welcome back. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. A few of the headlines we covered today: the Brexit war is now over. Huge news with the Conservative Party winning a massive, biggest win since Margaret Thatcher. Trump is celebrating with Boris Johnson, who will remain the prime minister. Nigel Farage, who I love, Nigel Farage. My favorite part was right after the Brexit happened in 2016, he went to the European Union because, he was a member of the 12-star flag, European Union, or the European Parliament. And he said something like, 10 years ago when I started talking about leaving the EU, you all laughed at me. Well, I just have to say, who's laughing now? And everyone was like, boo. And then some people were, it's one of the greatest moments. It's like, it's almost like it was a movie, because it was so good. But Nigel Farage has weighed in. He said, quote, hard left socialism has been crushed tonight. Great news. I fought against the EU for 25 years, much of it on my own. So at least tonight I feel a lot closer. So it's a big deal. Boris Johnson saying that there will not be a second referendum. He's saying that they will be out of the EU by January 31st. January 31st. They will be out of the EU January 31st. In the meantime, here in about an hour, it looks like they're going to vote to impeach the President of the United States for abuse of power, we think, maybe. John Solomon has got the best take on this. He says this impeachment is like a banana duct taped to a wall. No one gets that. No one actually gets. It's a $120,000 piece of art. It was a banana duct taped to a wall. And some guy went up and ate it. But I think that's such a great analogy. Oh, let's put a banana, we'll duct tape it to a wall. We'll call it art. That'll be $120,000. And somebody paid for it. $120,000. And everybody's like, ooh. That's exactly what they're doing with Donald Trump and impeachment. And yet the rest of us are looking at this like, what's the big deal about a banana duct taped to a wall? That's not anything there. What's the big deal about a phone call? It was a bribe, or no, it was a quid pro quo. We're going to impeach him. It was a quid pro quo. No, it was a bribe. I think they poll tested a quid pro quo, and they don't know. Like, they found out that most Americans don't know what the Latin phrase even means. And they're like, that's what, bribe. Bribe is easier. Everyone understands bribe. It was a bribe. We're going to impeach him on bribes. You know what? Scratch all that. It was just an abuse of power. Okay. Abuse of power. That sounds good. Folks, we have the casino issue in Pope County. Russellville and the county have reached a deal. They're going to cut Russellville in on some action if the casino actually comes to fruition. Also, the Arkansas Supreme Court blocking a new DNA test for the 1993 slaying of a DeQueen woman. That's got the optics on it don't look good, but you got to actually read what Sean Womack wrote. We reread that to you. Conduit for Action has a great article up at the website conduitforaction.org. Who will endorse the tax? It's previewing this goal of the Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson. His number one goal is to get a tax passed at the ballot box in 2020. We're all going to be worried about whether Trump's going to get reelected or not. Asa Hutchinson's number one goal is to get a tax passed. Also, the Arkansas Supreme Court saying that signatures must be counted in the ophthalmologist strike back and the ophthalmologist vendetta against optometrists, and how they were able to pass a bill that deregulated their profession, allowing them to practice within the scope of their training. Ophthalmologists say no, and they sent everyone out, got signatures, and the Arkansas Supreme Court said that John Thurston does need to count the signatures. Now, originally, John Thurston said he disqualified some of the signatures because he said that there was a new state law that required sworn statements for ballot initiatives to be provided to the Secretary of State office before canvassing begins, and some of that didn't happen. But the Supreme Court saying, no, that doesn't matter. You need to go ahead and count the signatures. So we'll see. Will they have enough valid signatures to get on the ballot now? I would assume so, or this whole lawsuit wouldn't have happened in the first place. Folks, we're going to sign off, end the show. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you on Monday. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Find your General Waverly. Find a General Waverly this Christmas. Do something nice for him or her. Somebody in your life that you've been meaning to thank. for a very long time about something, and you just keep forgetting to do it, do something nice for them. Be safe.